Okay, we can start now. So yeah, so what we have covered yesterday, let me just quickly recap. So yesterday we have seen the Citrix feature. Sorry. So I'm just going to recap what we have covered yesterday. So we talk about features, ADC feature, Citrix ADC features. In features, we have seen that what ADC can do. I mean, Citrix AD can do. So basically, it can do these major tasks: application availability, so it can do application availability, it can do application acceleration, apart from application acceleration, it can protect the application, so it can provide application security, and finally it can work as a gateway, so it can work as a Citrix gateway. Okay, so application availability, in application availability you can make this device as a load balancer, where it would be providing load balancing on the layer 4 or layer 7. It can work as a global server load balancing. That means it would be able to manage your global traffic. In application acceleration, this would be able to do the optimization for different types of protocol, especially TCP. Also, it would be able to do the cache redirection. That means it can store the cache. Okay, so whenever user is requesting for the backend node services, so I mean your Citrix device would store frequently used pages, or we can say the library, etc., and it can provide the information from there itself instead of going to the backend node. Also, it can work as an application security, where it can protect against layer 7 attacks. For example, layer 7 DOS attack, layer 7 any kind of layer 7 attacks, for example XSS, SQL injection, etc. It can work as a web application firewall. And finally, it can work as a Citrix gateway. It can work for the RDP proxy, it can work for the SSL, or it can work for the endpoint analysis. So that's we discussed. We talk about Citrix devices, I mean Citrix appliances.
Citrix gateway is a GSLB or?
No, Citrix gateway, it can work as a proxy. For example, it can work as a SSL proxy, or it can work as a RDP proxy.
Okay, which one is the GSLB under this?
GSLB is this feature, application availability.
Okay, thanks.
So now next we also discuss what are the Citrix model. We have a model means types of I can say types of devices. So we have VPX, we have MPX, and we have SDX. Okay, so VPX is a virtual device. These are the physical device. But the difference is here you can do in the SDX, you can do the virtualization. That means within one box, you can install multiple, Citrix devices, and here you can assign it to different tenant. So if you have multi-tenant environment, you can go for SDX. And MPX, this is again physical device, but this is a dedicated hardware. right? So we have in our lab, we have, VPX, and if you want to download VPX, so by default, you can download from the Citrix website. So let me just clear this. So for example, if you want to download ADC, so you can go on Citrix website here on download option. First of all, you have to register. So I have registered myself, and then you can select the Citrix ADC. There are different products of the Citrix. So basically, if you want to download ADC, you can select this, and you can select the version, which version you want to download. For example, we have Citrix VPX release 13.1. So you can download this one as well. So from Citrix website, you can download. Also we discuss about licensing part. So in Citrix, we have different types of licenses. We have standard license, advanced license, and premium licenses. So, when you go for the licenses, different types of license, so might be you would be getting more feature. So by default, if you don't activate, so you would get basic license, but you can activate and according to your need, and you can switch for the license. So licensing part we are going to cover later, right? Now, after that, we discuss, one more item, which is IP, Citrix IP we have discussed. So we have three types of IPs in Citrix. One is NSIP. Okay, so this stands for Netscaler IP. Netscaler IP. And this Netscaler IP is for the management. This is for management access. We have another type of IP, which is SNIP, which stands for Subnet IP. And this IP is for the backend node communication. Nodes, or we can say server communication. And further we have VIP, which is virtual IP. This is for, this is for front-end communication. So as you know how load balancer is working, let me just draw here. For example, if you have Citrix box, let's say this is a Citrix box. Citrix VPX, okay. So to manage this Citrix VPX, you require NSIP. So let's consider that for NSIP, you have defined 10.0.0. Let's say 1 you have defined. This is NSIP. So what it would be doing, this is admin machine or jump host. From here, you can access your Citrix device, okay. And this would be assigned on the management port by default, NSIP. So you can access it, and once you access it, you can do the configuration, all the configuration you can do. So either you just want to do a configuration using CLI or GUI. So all those configuration you can achieve through this NSIP. You can do this using that NSIP. So what you can do the configuration plus reporting you want, that you can do. Apart from that, if your Citrix want to communicate to any other services, for example, it's want to communicate to DNS, it want to communicate to Active Directory or NTP server, so it is using NSIP to communicate by default. So it is also communicating to Active Directory using NSIP, your DNS services, NTP services, etc. This is communicating using NSIP. Next we have, subnet IP or SNIP. So SNIP is for the backend node communication. So if you have backend node, these are, let's say, backend node or backend server. This is server number 1, this is 2, this is 3. So if Citrix is communicating to these backend node, this is communicating via, SNIP. Here you would configure SNIP. So let's say these are the backend node for which you have IP subnet 192.168.2.0/24. So here on SNIP, you have to define same subnet IP, or you need to make sure that from SNIP, the backend node should be accessible. So you can configure 192.168.2.1 over here. Okay. And now we have virtual IP. So let's say here you have defined a virtual IP, VIP. And virtual IP, let's say you have given something, any IP you have given. So let's see 192.168.2.50 you have given. This is a virtual IP. So user or application would be hitting the virtual IP. They would be hitting the virtual IP. And from virtual IP, this Citrix is going to act as a reverse proxy. This Citrix device is going to generate the traffic for these system on behalf of user, and this system is going to reply to Citrix SNIP. So basically, when you see the packet capture over here on this system, so this is, it would looks like that who is sending the request, not user. Who is sending the request? VPX itself using SNIP. So you would get the information that all the requests which is coming on this server, they would be coming from here. So that this would become the source, and the server would become this destination when you do the packet capture at this point. Okay. But for the user would never be able to reach over here. Okay. User would be always hitting the front end IP. So this virtual IP is what? Front end IP. Okay. After this SNIP or these things, we understood the hardware. Okay. So we discuss about the hardware in Citrix device. So let me just go. After this, we went for the hardware. So if you get the physical box, how you would identify that whether this is SDX or MPX. So basically there would be button in hardware. Yesterday I have shown you one of the page. So let's say this is Citrix front end. On front end, you would have a LCD panel right here. You would have a LCD panel, and there would be key, right?
Two port. One is console. One is OOB.
Right. So this is LCD. And to navigate all the option which is displaying on the LCD, you have the key. So you have key like this. Key like this. Okay. As you press center key, this center key, so this is going to show you information that what is the model number, whether this is SDX or MPX, that's what it is going to show you. Then there is a USB port right here. This would be USB.
Two USB.
Yeah, two USB. And these USB port is for, for reimaging. If you want to reimage the device, you can do reimaging using these USB port. Or even though you can upgrade using these USB port. Okay. So like any other box, this is used for the device reimaging and or device upgrade. However, upgrade you can do using other option as well. Okay, but sometimes let's say other option is not working, so you can go for the upgrade using USB. Then there is a LOM, lights out management port. So that's a RJ45. Sorry. So this is LOM. This is used for out of band management. And then you have a management port. This would be management port. Usually using this management port, you can access your device either using CLI or you can access this using GUI. By default, this management port, it depends on the model number. It would have IP 192.168.100.1, I think. And then you have a console port over here. There would be console port. Console port. And this console is port is for CLI access. Let's say if there is anything broken, for example, let's say your some of the services which is running this GUI services, let's say that is not accessible or that is broken. So you can access your device using console port. And after that, you would have a copper port, copper and SFP port. So here you have all Ethernet port. Basically, those would be fast Ethernet port, or they can work as a gigabit as well. So these are your copper port, copper Ethernet port, and SFPs. So here this would be used for SNIP. You can configure SNIP over here on all these port. Okay, so these are the copper port. There you can configure SNIP. So this is front end panel. In front end panel, you would have a LED. Okay, so you would have multiple LEDs on here itself on the device. Here there would be LEDs right here near to the interface. Okay, so if LEDs are off, so off means no connection. Off means no connection. If this is a flashing, these LED are flashing. So flashing means these are the active. If flashing green, if there is a green color flashing, that means it is providing 100 Mbps. And if it is flashing as an amber, so it is providing how much speed? 1 Gbps. Right. So this is hardware. Okay, a different hardware could have a different things. We don't have any dedicated HA interface here on Citrix box. There is no dedicated HA interface. We should use any of them as a dedicated HA interface. Okay, now moving to next, this is a front panel. And there would be back panel as well. So on back panel, you would be seeing the power switch, power supply, and your SSD. So those things you would see on the back panel. Let me just draw back panel. back panel. On the back panel, we have NMI button. We have solid state drive. This is SSD. We have fan. Fan is internally mounted. There are two fans. Fan 1, fan 2, and then power switch. And then we have power supply. Supply. There would be I mean, it depends on the device. If there is a single power supply, so there would be other for the optional. You would get the bay over here for the optional. Power supply. Optional. That would be optional. Okay. So its consumption could be different. I mean, power consumption could be different. By default, it is consuming 265 watt, I think. 265 watt is a typical consumption for the power supply to this device. Okay. Now we are going to talk the next topic, which is deployment model. So if you want to deploy this device, how you can deploy it. So let's talk about deployment model.